If the government shows this low threshold, then they can search a person's home or business without informing the target of that investigation. Section 215 is called the business records provision. This provision is also set to expire at the end of the year, December 31st. Whether this provision is reauthorized is up to the Congress as well. This provision allows the government to obtain a court order to turn over any business records that it wants to get hold of. These business records include library records. Library records include all books and magazines that were purchased or borrowed from a library, all CDs, DVDs, anything borrowed or purchased from a library. It also includes internet surfing habits that take place in the library. It also includes medical records, which would obviously include private patient information. Records and lists of individuals who the government believes belong to a political organization that espouses political rhetoric that is against the government. So this would allow the government to obtain a list of all individuals that are part of these organizations. Section 505, called the National Security Letters Provision, allows the government to compel production from a private entity of all financial records, credit reports, telephone numbers, internet, and other communications or transactional records. What this means is that the government can ask a company like AT&T to produce telephone records of a particular individual. Now, what also comes with this order is that it's a gag order. AT&T would not only have to produce these records, but they cannot inform the individual that these records have been released. The only person that AT&T would be allowed to inform is an attorney. The government also is not required to disclose that this search took place either. The FBI only needs to assert that records are needed for investigation. This is the threshold to obtain this information. Moving away from the USA Patriot Act, we have the mandatory detention laws that have been employed against Muslim Americans post 9/11. These laws generally apply to any immigrant that the government deems to be engaging in activity that endangers national security. These types of activities could include overthrowing a government, having or might engage in terrorist activities in the future. Immigrants under these laws can be detained up to 90 days. However, they can be held up to 6 months if they've been deemed a national security threat. Every 6 months under these laws, the immigrant would have to petition the Attorney General of the United States under a writ of habeas corpus to be released. Oftentimes these petitions are denied, so what ends up happening is these immigrants end up being detained indefinitely, petitioning every 6 months. The material witness statute has also been employed against Muslim Americans post 9/11. Essentially, what this statute does is it allows the federal government to arrest a witness if the government believes that this witness may have some material information regarding an ongoing criminal investigation, meaning that person doesn't have to have committed a crime, he doesn't have to be charged with a crime, he could be innocent, but he would be detained on the basis that he might have some important information regarding an ongoing criminal investigation. This statute has actually been employed against thousands of Muslims after 9/11. Serial witnesses have been denied the right to counsel, the right to contact with family members. They've even been denied an initial hearing to determine whether that individual even poses a flight risk. What's the importance of being determined to be a flight risk? Well, if you're a flight risk, the government would hold you in prison to make sure that you're available to testify, that you're not going to skip out of town. Everyone should have the right to have this hearing done initially to determine whether they need to be detained or not. As I've said before, most material witnesses have not been charged with a crime and have been proven innocent. The other thing to be aware of is there is a widespread pattern, an apparent pattern, of the use of FBI informants and legal provocateurs that have been sent to mosques around the country. Now I'm going to move to part 2 of my presentation, which is going to discuss what to do if you're approached by the FBI or the local police, what to do, what not to do. As far as interacting with the FBI, whether in person or by telephone, the most important thing to know is never ever lie or provide false information to the FBI. This is considered a federal crime. But at the same time, you need to know that you have no obligation to talk to the FBI, even if you're not a citizen. Refusing to answer any question cannot be held against you. It does not even imply that you have something tied that is a right that we are afforded under the Constitution. You must know, however, that you are required to identify yourself to members of law enforcement. If they ask you, for example, what is your name, your address, your date of birth, your place of birth, or social security number, you should answer these questions. However, remember, you do have a right not to answer any questions, but know that if you do not answer questions with regards to identifying yourself, you can be arrested, probably will be arrested. You do have the right to request that the FBI not approach your employer until your attorney contacts them and a valid reason is given. It is also your legal right not to answer any questions involving religion, race, or ethnicity. And it is your legal right not to invite agents into your home or your place of business. With regards to searches and questioning, the first thing you should do is ask if you're under arrest. If you are, you have the right to know why. The police has the right to pat down your clothing if they suspect that you have a concealed weapon. Don't physically resist the officers, but make it clear that you don't consent to any further search. You don't have to consent to a search of yourself, your car, or your home. But remember to make it clear that you do not consent to the search to protect yourself for later on. If you do consent to a search, it can affect your rights later on in court. If the police knock and ask to enter your home, you don't have to admit them unless they have a warrant signed by a judge. If they do have a warrant, demand to read it and follow them. Allow them to search only the specific items and areas included in the warrant. They do not have a right to search outside of the search warrant. However, you should know that in some certain emergency situations, such as, for example, if the police hear someone screaming inside a home, they don't need to have a search warrant to enter your home. You should know not to interfere or obstruct with the police. This can lead to your arrest. If you're shown a photo and asked to identify someone, remember, you're not required to answer any questions. Simply state that you would be happy to cooperate with the presence of an attorney. You should say this whether or not you have an attorney. You can get the attorney afterwards. If you're arrested or taken to a police station, you have the right to remain silent, as mentioned before. Always, always obtain a competent attorney before answering any questions. Don't assume that you will be able to answer those questions. You should always have an attorney there with you. Whether or not